Okay, we're going to start this evening with something interesting. We're going to call this a little Musar exercise. And here we go. Here's the question. The question is, who are you? Who are you? So we've been down this road a bit before, but I think this is a very important point. But let's begin. Ladies, who are you?
That's a loaded question. I'm saying the same thing.
Okay.
Because we know that you're expecting us to say neshama, and you're going to say you're not your neshama.
I'll take any answer. I'll take any answer. Okay, at least an accurate. Okay. All right. So let's start. The reason why we're going to broaden this discussion this evening is because we're going to see it's a little bit more complex than even we've given it credit till now. So again, I'm certainly not the arms, the head, the chest, the leg. You know, usually you point to me. I'm not the body. We get that part, but the next step to recognize, and this is the next step. We've done this before, but again, we're gonna, as we get more involved in it, you'll see it becomes more complex. If I ask you, what are you? Most people think of themselves as the brain, but again, when you bury the body, the brain goes into the kever with it as well. The brain is something that I think about. So I think through, I think with, I relate to the world with, I see through, I recall things through, but I use the brain. Meaning there's a computer right over here. I am the user of the computer. I'm not the computer. This is a Mac, but I am a person. So to the brain is something that I use, but identifying who I am isn't as simple, I think, as I wish it were. So let's begin.
Can I give another try?
Please.
I am a chelek el-kamima.
So that is more confusing because I surely don't know what that means. Who are you, though?
I'm a being created by Hashem.
Everyone
I'm part
is,
of Hashem.
Everything is created by Hashem at every moment, and Hashem keeps everything in existence. The question is, who are you?
A distinct being that Hashem created.
Okay, but who are you?
My actions.
You are your actions?
Yes. Isn't that what's left? Once I'm dead, that's what's left.
So you are not your actions.
Your deeds.
Not your deeds either. You are not your deeds.
You are what your actions formed you to be.
So it's the most basic, intuitive, and life-changing concept. I am me. But
Who is me?
But I want to explain to you why that's such a huge step forward. It's such a huge step forward because I am the one who thinks, who feels, who remembers, who does. I'm the guy inside. I'm the one who tells my arms and legs to move. I'm the one who tells my body to move forward. I'm the one who allows my mind to control me, or I control it. But I am the one inside. But
But wait a minute. But Hashem is really the one telling me to move my hand.
no, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Bechira.
Hashem gave us Bechira. Bechira means we have our own volition, our
I'm
own.
going to bring you Beloved Mishkan Evna, where he specifically says that Hashem is really, in the end of the day, control. We think we're controlling, but it's
So here's how it works. In other words, there's a concept called a das nifra, a intelligent being separate from Hashem. A malach is not controlled by Hashem. A malach is a das nifra, a separate, intelligent being with its own volition, its own interests, its own desires, its own. We can loosely call it a personality, but it's much, much broader than that. But it has its own bechira. It could listen or could not listen. Now, it's not going to disobey Hashem because it recognizes the value of every action that it does and understand everything Hashem commands is for its good and the good of the world. Everything bad is for bad for it and bad for the world. But it has full free will and could completely ignore Hashem and completely disavow itself from Hashem. It won't get too far because Hashem keeps everything in existence, every moment of being. But at the end of the day, I am a separate being from Hashem. Now, I mean, again, what that means is Hashem keeps me in existence and Hashem keeps everything in existence, but I have my own volition, my own das, my own intelligence, my own will. I am a separate entity. And to say I am I mean, there are people who say they're God, but it's a very serious problem that we're dealing with. But I'm not Hashem. When we say I'm a chelik elokimim, that refers to a level of kedusha, a level of ruchnius. But again, I have my own will. You know what, ladies? Let's go back to the seagull marshal. That's the easiest way to do it. I and the seagull, right? I dream about the seagull. The seagull is not a separate entity. And the seagull cannot will itself to do anything. And in the dream, if I say to the seagull, go east, it cannot go west. That's because I am not a creator. When Hashem created human beings, the most difficult thing, when you really dig into this deeply, you'll see that the most difficult thing for us to understand is how Hashem could create something that's independent of Him, dependent on Him, but independent of Him, and with its own will, and able to disobey Hashem. So in other words, in the dream, let's go again. Here's a dream. It's freezing night, I'm shivering, close my eyes, imagine a beach scene, sand, the ocean blue, the sky, the lone seagull. Now, I am the dreamer of the seagull. As long as I think about the seagull, it exists. The minute I cease thinking about the seagull, it ceases to exist. Now, I will the seagull to go east. It's physically impossible for the seagull to do anything but what I will it to, because it only exists in my mind, and it only exists in my understanding, and it's physically impossible for it to go east when I want it to go west. But that's not the bria that Hashem did when Hashem created man. Hashem created a seagull with its own das, its own will. Now the seagull is controlled by Hashem, and the seagull can only do what Hashem wants, but Hashem gave it its own volition, its own will, and Hashem will allow it to go east, even though Hashem wants it to go west. So Hashem says, seagull, go east, and the seagull says, I'm going west. Please go east. No, I'm going west. And it could literally turn the other way, and because it's a concept that, if you think about it, is beyond our human understanding. You appreciate why it's impossible to create something with its own free will? I'm sorry?
It's like Pinocchio.
It's like Pinocchio. So
He created Pinocchio, and then Pinocchio went off and did his own thing.
yeah, so here's the problem. In fairy tales it works, but if you think about it deeply, it doesn't work. You can't create a computer program that has its own will. No matter how far science fiction tries to... I'm sorry? I understand, no matter how far they try to play the game of artificial intelligence, it doesn't have its own will. It's only programming. It's if this, then that, if this, then that, but there's no will there. There's no...
program itself.
So in theory, you could have a program that could program itself, but there's no will there to do anything other than what it was programmed to do. So if you willed it to program itself, it will program itself. If you willed it not to program itself, it won't, because there's no independent will. An independent entity, an independent will, is so beyond human conception, surely beyond humans' ability to create. It's probably one of the most difficult things for us human beings to understand, and one of the greatest chedushim in my Bereshis, that Hashem can create an entity with its own will separate from Hashem. So far, so bad? Okay, this really wasn't what I wanted to get into, because we're leagues and leagues beyond where I wanted to be.
You asked the question.
Okay, let's start again.
Right. Your point.
Okay, who am I? So I am the one inside. I'm the one who feels. I'm the one who thinks. But here's the big step. The biggest step that we human beings always mess up on is we think that I am physical, and I am not physical. My body's physical, my arms are physical, my chest is physical, my legs is physical, my eyes are physical, my brain is physical, but I am not physical. I'm totally, utterly, completely spiritual. I'm ruchni. As a matter of fact, the biggest mistake we make is that, a person will be the Rosh Hashanah, and it's unbelievable. It's like, I had this spiritual experience. It's so strange, because here I am, this physical being, temporarily having this spiritual experience. Nothing could be further from the truth. I am not a physical being occasionally having a spiritual experience. I am a spiritual entity temporarily having a physical experience. I'm the guy inside. I started from under Hashem's kisei hakavod. Hashem put me into this body for a few short years, but I'm the one who thinks, I'm the one who feels, I'm the one who tells my arms and legs to move. I'm the guy inside, and I am utterly, totally, completely spiritual, not at all physical. Not at all physical. utterly, completely spiritual.
How do you say not at all physical?
Because I'm not at all physical.
You're just wearing a physical coat.
But you always say that we have the nefesh, bahami, and nefesh, no, and that's.
Now,
physical.
I am mixed into this very confusing entity. I was put into this body, and in this body has drives and appetites and pulls, and therefore it feels like I'm hungry. And it's true. When I relate to it, I am hungry, but really, it's not me. I guess it feels like it's me. It sure does, when you punch my arm, it hurts me, but really, I'm the guy in.
The physical also affects the neshama. If you could tarnish it. You could, obviously it's pure, but obviously if you give into your tigers, it will affect, your neshama. And there's.
But that neshama, that or the I, am not physical. I'm in the physical body. I'm pulled by physical drives because there's another component in nefesh bahami. I could, I guess, in theory, become more physical-like, in a sense that if I give into my desires, they become stronger and they're more effective on me. I can even make them a part of me, but that's almost like it's almost like a false. I'll give you an example. Could you imagine after I die, my body's put in the ground, and I get up to Shemayim and I say, I am so hungry. Oh, I wish I had a steak. I wish I had a steak and potatoes. Now, could you imagine that kind of scene? Let's assume not. Now, but if you give into your nefesh bahami enough, that could become a part of you. In other words, if you give in to appetites, desires, and let them rule over you, they become a part of you. And there are various stories, you remember there were Shmuzim about this also, number 46, where you can leave your body, no longer have a body, and still have desires that are physical. You desire to eat or desire to procreate or whatever you gave into. So you could make them a part of you, but again, it's like we'd call it like a phantom pain. In other words, meaning, if you lose an arm, you can still have pain in the arm, but you don't have an arm. So it's phantom pain. So in a similar sense, if you don't have a body, if you make these desires part of you, you could still desire these things even after you die. Your body's put in the ground, you still have these appetites and desires, even though it's ridiculous, it's ludicrous, but you can make them a party. But at the end of the day, unless I mess things up badly, I am not physical. I am utterly, completely spiritual, temporarily put into this body, and having a temporary physical experience. Okay, so far so good, right? Okay, now, no, so bad. Okay, why?
Who am I?
Who am I? So that's what I'm saying. It's the most intuitive and groundbreaking concept.
Your spiritual self is you.
I am I.
You didn't.
Everything but your body is you.
I the one who thinks, I the one who feels, I the one who goes to sleep, I the one who wakes up. I'm the I. I'm speaking to you. Let's say I start yelling, I start calling your names, and what happens? You feel embarrassed. Who? You. I tell you, great news, you have a new grandson, you feel great joy. Who feels great joy? You. You are the person. You are the one inside. It's the most intuitive, obvious concept that we never think about. No?
How can I get in touch with I?
You are you. Don't get in touch with you. You are it. You're there. You're existing.
The positives and the negatives?
Yes. Well, we're going to see. We're going to split things up in a moment. But on the simplest level, let's start this way. Rabbi Salsalanta, in his famous letter, says as follows: there is no difference between a person alive and dead except for taking off the coat. Pshitas abeged levad, just taking off the coat. So imagine that I walk into the room and I take off my coat. I'm in the room. The body is the coat. So they put the body on the ground and I am there. Now, the key distinction between me now and me after the body is put in the ground is clarity. Suddenly, brilliantly, I get it. I'm vibrantly alive and awake. Every memory is there. Everything I was ever engaged in is a part of me. and I'm brilliantly aware of my existence, of Hashem's existence, of the reason for creation. It's like from slumber to awake. But again, who is it who leaves the body? Me. The most simple, obvious, yet, again, aha moment, mind-boggling moment, when I get it that I'm the guy inside. So far, so good? Who are you?
I am I.
Perfect. Good?
What's the Kiddush?
No, good. No, we didn't get anywhere yet. Okay, now. Okay. Now, let's imagine we have two puppets. And let's say we have two puppets, and someone says, I will for these puppets to be alive. Guess what? Like Pinocchio. Zeppetti, what's his name? Geppetto. Geppetto carves out Pinocchio, and he says, I wish for a boy. Guess what's going to happen?
Nothing.
Okay. Nothing's going to happen. Well, why not?
We can create life. I mean, well, technically.
Because we're not Hashem.
But what is lacking? So let's go back to Mary Shelley. I'm sorry?
The breath of life.
The breath of life. What is the breath of life? So let's do a little Mary Shelley, right? The Frankenstein Monster. So Dr. Frankenstein is 1818. Dr. Frankenstein takes the corpses from all the various bodies, he sews it together, and he's got the Frankenstein monster, right? It's all assembled, all stitched together, a head from this person, arms from this person, legs from this cadaver, all assembled. Now, here's the problem. The Frankenstein monster is lying there, inert. It's not doing nothing. It's nothing. It's just not moving. So what's lacking is the breath of life. So how does he make it alive? Anybody remember the story?
Electricity.
Right. Now, in the 1818s, remember, Benjamin Franklin flew that kite. It wasn't that long ago that electricity was discovered. Electricity was this, like, cool thing, the mysterious, like, power behind things, like a... So, in the storyline, electricity. So he puts up the lightning rod, lightning hits it, and it comes down into the body, whoosh, and the Frankenstein monster comes alive. Because the breath of life was breathed into it, because electricity, that's it. Now, the Frankenstein monster never happened, because electricity is not going to make a cadaver alive. But why not? Everything is there. You have the brain, you have the lymph nodes, you have the blood, you got, everything's there.
It's like you need Hashem's electricity.
What do you mean? What do you need?
Only He can create a spiritual being.
Thank you. You need a spiritual being to occupy that body. Dead and alive is based on one thing. Is there a spiritual entity occupying that body? If there is no spiritual entity, it's dead. If there's a spiritual entity that's put into it, then that spiritual entity is now wearing the clothing of the Frankenstein monster or the dog or the person or whoever it may be. But the point is...
What about the person in the coma?
So he's still attached. He, the one inside, is still attached. Not conscious, but still attached to the body until dead.
The spiritual being is still inside the person in the coma.
Right. Now, until death, the neshama is there, occupying. I am there. But, but let's use the word neshama there, because the conscious I isn't there then. So the neshama is there. As long as the neshama occupies the body is alive. Now, it may not be conscious at that moment, but the body is fully, is alive. So again, the difference between dead and alive is one key criteria. Is there a spiritual entity in the body? If there's a spiritual entity in the body, it's alive. If there's no spiritual entity, the body is dead. So what is life? Now that question, by the way, that question stumps medical ethicists all day long. What is life? Oh, I don't know. What's the difference between dead and alive? There's no definition. There is no definition. But you know why there's no definition? Because you cannot measure I. You can't weigh it. You can't add it to a beaker, add blue dye and see what color it turns. I doesn't exist in the physical world. You can't weigh it, you can't measure it, you can't box it, because I am utterly, completely spiritual. And that's why medical science has such difficulty defining death. The difference in alive and dead has no physical definition. There is no definition, because
It's a functionality of your organs.
but the organs could be functioning, and is he alive or is he dead?
Depends.
Vegetable.
Let's say you took-
brain dead or your heart dead.
So brain dead. So brain dead's dead, right? And that's what I'm saying. Let's say we took a Frankenstein monster, we took a cadaver, and we put pieces together, and we had machines running the breathing, we had the respiration. No,
Let's take it the other way. Let's take a person who is, machines are running the body, but their brain is no longer alive. Are we allowed to turn off the machines because their brain is not alive?
the person is still there. The person still occupies the body. Maybe not be conscious. When a person's sleeping, am I allowed to shoot him? He's sleeping. He's not there.
He's only 60% dead.
Right. He's 1/60th of death. Right. So I'm allowed to shoot him. Right. That's God's job. But the point is, though, that the difference.
So when is the person dead? If he's brain dead, but he's
So does it-
That's what I'm saying. If you, the person is technically dead, the only thing that's keeping them alive is the machines.
Well, but then he's still attached to the body. The difference in life and death really is very simple. When I'm in the body, when the neshaman's in the body's alive. When the neshama leaves, the body's dead. What's so hard to understand? You know what's so hard to understand? Because neshama is not measurable in a physical world. Because neshama is utterly, completely spiritual.
Well, this time they say for somebody, they do like the weight, the body weight does go down a little bit. It's like a drop in their mass. They said that a person loses weight, like when the neshama does leave, they will lose, that was after the amount it is, but it's like you do weigh less.
Okay, but the point is, that it's not certainly when a person is in a coma, the difference between dead and alive is not measurable. But again, here's the point. The reason why death is so difficult to define is because I don't exist in a physical plane. I am utterly spiritual. And when I'm in the body, I'm alive. When I'm out of the body's dead. But you can't measure I. There's no scale of measurement. Not tall, not short, not heavy, not dense. There's no scale to measure it by. And therefore,
The function of mine is just to keep me alive.
well, I am alive. I am the entity.
Because I'm thinking like
Yes,
animals
you'll
that
take
are
a sec,
alive,
sec,
or non-Jewish people and all that, they're alive. So, but they're not spiritual. Animals aren't spiritual beings.
Well, let's see.
Basically what you're saying is I never dies. It's just a question of whether I is housed in our book or I
Exactly.
is housed someplace else.
The
But
concept
it's
of death even is almost
but the I itself never dies.
right. I don't die. I'm wearing a coat, and the coat is taken off, and then I'm no longer influenced, contained, constrained by the body. Death isn't like going to sleep. Death is like waking up. In other words, as long as I'm in this body, I'm contained by it, constrained by it, I'm held back by it. I can.
That's why you could sometimes say somebody could be as Goodall, or somebody could come back as something else because their eyes is going into a different coat.
Exactly. Okay, now, here's where things get complicated. Excuse me. Let's talk about a dog, a cow, a donkey, a giraffe. Are they alive?
Yeah.
No, they sure do look alive. If you shech the cow is dead. If you don't shech the cow is walking around. So clearly, the difference between a cow alive and a cow dead is very real. Now, what's the difference between the cow being alive and the cow being dead? So let's start the other way. If you were to take a pile of bricks and from today till tomorrow will them to become a building, they're not going to become a building. If you take a pile of molecules and from today till tomorrow will them to be an entity, it doesn't work that way. What happens is, even if you have a form, there has to be something that brings it to life. The nefesh bahami of the behemoth is what brings the behemoth to life. Matter of fact, the way Derech Hashem explains it is immediately after conception, the nefesh is put into that seed, and the nefesh bahami is what causes everything to grow. we think of DNA as the coding that guides the growth of the human. Apparently, that may be part of it. That's sort of like the physical traces, but the neshama or the nefesh in the animal is what actually causes everything to develop as an animal. So immediately upon conception, Hashem puts the nefesh into the, let's say the nefesh of a dog into those cells, and that nefesh is then responsible for the formation of the animal, the organs, the skin, the bones. That's what directs everything. A little bit like eye to the brain, meaning a lot of times people confuse I with the brain because I think through the brain, but it's I who thinks through the brain. So too, the DNA in the animal, the cellular coding, the nefesh will use that as part of to create the structure. But again, there's a nefesh that's operating it, that's guiding it. The animal, when it's born, has a fully formed nefesh bahami, and that nefesh bahami has all of the instincts and all of the desires to keep it alive. And that's what guides it, that's what directs it. Now, if you read Jane Goodall was an interesting woman. She spent 30 years, literally 30 years, sleeping in the African. Where was it in?
That's one with the monkeys?
Monkeys, right? Yeah, where was she sleeping? I forgot where it was already. I read two of her books. It might have been the Amazon. I forgot where it was. One of the jungles. But she spent 30 years studying chimpanzees in the wild, and it was a wonderful work. She really gave a tremendous amount of knowledge and insight to people about the animal behavior. But what she describes, you could see very distinct personalities in the chimps. They each were given names. She named them, and she would study them, and she described their personalities, their attachments, their allegiances. They would form bonds, and they would, she even describes the chimps. They used to give them bananas. The chimps would love bananas. And two of the chimps, once she put out like 5 or 10 bananas, and two of the chimps, they hadn't had bananas in a few months. They started slapping each other on the back, and you could see what were chimp smiles on their face. They were clearly there's not quite a personality, but there's a nefesh there, something alive. Now that nefesh has programmed with all of the instincts needed to keep that animal in existence. That it's given the appetite to eat, the desire to sleep, desire to procreate, and everything needed to keep it alive. That nefesh utilizes the brain of the animal the same way I use the brain of me. And that nefesh is able to access whatever level of intelligence that animal is given in its brain, and it's able to think and it's able to direct things. But again, it's similar to me with one big distinction. That nefesh, are you ready for this one? Take a deep breath, ladies. That nefesh is physical. When else, not spiritual. When Elsie the cow is shechted, the nefesh evaporates. Now, to understand what that means, that nefesh is a little bit like electricity. I think is a good mashal for it. Electricity,
It's live, but it's not spiritual.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly it. It's live, but it's not spiritual. It's what that means is it's vibrant. It does things. It doesn't have its own will, but it certainly has programming. But
it's almost like those wind-up toys, and you wind it up and it goes complete. So
in a sense, it's that, but it's a very complex wind-up toy because
it's much more than that. Because
it's trained.
Tremendous number of people in today's day and age that are having pets instead of children, and they're like getting their love and affection from this animal.
My wife and I were at a rest stop, and a woman was saying, "Baby, baby, baby," kissing her dog. Baby, baby, baby.
She was holding her.
Hold on, baby, baby. Yeah, okay, so yeah. Now, the truth is, now again, there are differences in animals in their allegiances and their nature, and they have not quite a personality, but there are very real differences between dogs. You could have an obedient dog and a disobedient dog. You have a dog that likes things and doesn't like things. So I'm sorry, I have kids like that also. Yeah, but the key to it is that the nefesh bahami in the animal is not spiritual. It's like electricity, it's alive, but it's not spiritual, and when the animal dies, it evaporates. Now, that nefesh bahami is attached to the dam, it's attached to the blood. Now, here's an interesting thing to think about. Why don't we eat blood? We don't eat blood.
This blood is nefesh?
All kinds of halachas about not eating blood. You have to salt it. If it's a liver, it's so saturated, you have to roast it to get the blood out. Don't eat blood. What's wrong with blood? Meat's kosher, right? Shechted Elsie the cow well. She's 100% kosher. But the blood, the blood's no good. Okay. So the Kli Yakar explains one of the interesting things about kashrus is that the things we eat are put into our body, and we digest not just the physical part, but whatever spiritual dimensions it has, we ingest as well. So for instance, he says, we don't eat predators. The Torah is very clear, any predatory animal we don't eat. Why? Because the nefesh bahami of a predator is this aggressive killing instinct, and if you eat the meat of a tiger, of a lion, you're going to ingest some of that nefesh bahami, some of that aggressiveness that you're going to put into your own nefesh bahami. The dam, the nefesh bahami is tied to the dam. And the reason we don't eat dam is because you're ingesting some of the nefesh bahami into you, and it makes you more behemoth-y. It makes you more physical, more desirous of this world. It attaches you more to the world, but it makes you much more behemoth-y. Okay, so far so good? All right. Now, let's talk about us. So, I am the one inside, but here's the complexity. I am part neshama that came from under Hashem's kisei kavod, but I was put into this body, and this body has a nefesh bahami, just like the baboon, the chimps, the monkeys, the giraffes. It has a nefesh. And that nefesh has appetites, desires, and has everything needed to keep me alive. The problem is that I, the conscious person, am constantly affected by both things, both my desires, my holy desires, as well as the animal instincts, nefesh bahami, etc. Now, if we were to stop here, life would be pretty complicated, because getting a grip on who am I and what part of me is desiring it, we'd see that there's a lot of complexity in the human. Or meaning, anyone ever find themselves acting differently on one occasion than another? Any ever find themselves getting angry and not being able to recognize themselves and doing things that are so dumb and stupid that I can't believe I did that, I can't right now, what's going on? Why would you do that? You're an intelligent person, why would you do that? Why would I do something so stupid? Why would I destroy? Why would I yell at people? Why would I do that? But what does a roch shtus mean? Okay, so it means exactly that. And let's go back to, we once discussed the computer mushal. Imagine you have one family computer and five, I'm sorry?
What you see is what you get.
No, wrong mushal, sorry. Good try.
Marshall 17.
Right, 14, right. You have five kids, all the kids eating supper, one family computer, and then all 5 kids rush over to one family computer to use it. Depending on which child gets control of the keyboard is going to determine what you're going to see on the screen, but all the kids are watching the screen. One kid wants to do his math homework, it's going to be a math program. One kid wants to play a game, it's going to be a game. One kid wants to do his science project, it's going to be Word. Whichever child gets control of the keyboard is going to determine what the screen shows, but all 5 children are watching that screen. So my brain is that computer. Now, who gets control of the brain? Well, it depends. A lot of times I have control. A lot of times nefesh bahami gets control, and it really depends. And it depends what time of the day, what the situation is, the week, whatever. But whoever gets control of the keyboard, whoever gets control of the brain, we're all watching that screen. So I am furious. What do you mean I'm furious? Why am I furious? Because I'm furious. What do you mean I'm furious? Because I am. But, okay. Now, I have a mushal that, I hate wasting this mushal, but this is the most incredible mushal. Would you like to fundamentally understand yourself? If say no, if it's no. I want to get the names. 1 second. It's Anne and Brittany. Abby and Brittany. Abby and Brittany are Siamese twins. I've seen this, and it's a fascinating thing to watch. Abby and Brittany. Now, Siamese twins mean they have one body, two heads, two brains, but again, one circulation system, one body, two heads. Now, normally Siamese twins, they try now to separate them at birth, but depending on the situation, they can't always do it. If they have only one heart or one, set of organs, they can't separate. In any case, Abby and Brittany were co-joined and could not be separated at birth. And therefore they grew up as two individuals sharing one body. Abby has control of the left side, Brittany has control of the right side, meaning the right leg and right, and they're twins who literally share their lives together, but they're distinct personalities. They're very different. Now, when you watch them, in any case, they grew up, they went to school, went to college, got an education degree, and they now teach in the public school. And they're supposed to be great teachers.
They can each watch half the class.
You ever hear that expression?
Is it different classes?
No, it's the teacher, same class. But you ever hear that teacher says, I have eyes in the back of my head? So, in any case, you have to see this image. By the way, they took this is so funny. They took a driving test. But here's the problem. Abby controls the left arm and the left leg. Brittany controls the right arm and the right leg. They made them take the driving test twice. They coordinate. I don't know what they were thinking, but the point is they walk. They've got it down so pat that they walk left, right, they hold hands like they're a regular functioning person, and except there are two heads and there are two minds and okay. Now, so far so good. Let's assume for a minute, this is not the truth, but let's assume for a minute that Abby has a drinking problem and Brittany doesn't. And Abby loves to drink and Brittany hates when she gets drunk. Here's the problem. The problem is they share one circulation system. So Abby starts drinking and Brittany says, stop it. Abby says, no, I want to drink. Stop it. And she drinks. Now the problem is, though, even though Brittany does not want to get drunk, they share one circulation system, and therefore, even though they're distinct people, when Abby drinks, it's the same body, and they both get drunk together. Okay, so here's where the neshama and the nefesh bahami are co-joined, like Siamese twins. So what happens like this? I don't want to get angry, but I'm furious, but I don't want to be angry, but I'm furious, but I don't want to, but I am, but I am. The problem is I'm co-joined. There's a neshama and nefesh bahami that are co-joined, and we're in this deal together. And again, whoever gets control of that keyboard, both of us are there, both of us thinking, and everything together. Okay, so far we've only discussed the very, very basics of who we are. Derech Hashem explains that there's a whole other dimension to us, way, way beyond anything we've been discussing till now. And what we've been discussing now is the nefesh bahami and the lower neshama. Now, the lower neshama has aspects to it. There's dimyon, imagination. There's zikaron, memories. There's seichel, your ability to think. There are different aspects to it, but these are all in the lower neshama. There's a whole other part of I that I'm not attuned to, called the upper neshama. The upper neshama Hashem gave us to interact with the upper worlds, the spiritual worlds. I'm not attuned to it. I'm not aware of it. But it directly influences my thoughts, my thinking in a very sort of behind the scenes, sort of subtle way. So, for instance, it's what will happen is sometimes you'll have this sort of intuition, I should do this or I shouldn't do that. Or you'll have a desire to change. It's sort of, and I don't know why it is. So we say it's a hira tshuva. And what's actually happening is I have an upper neshama that I'm not attuned to, I'm not aware of, and that upper neshama was given to me because it interacts with the upper worlds, with the olam haruchni, which we discussed in previous sessions, and it is something that I'm completely unaware of. Let me share with you an example of that. Every Shabbos you get a neshama yisera. What does it feel like?
Tired.
It feels tired?
Friday night, out cold.
No matter what Shabbos is.
Exactly.
Yes.
4 or 8.
7 o'clock.
As soon as I'd stand, I'm out. Like right after, oh my god.
Okay, that is not your neshama yisera. Sorry. No.
But it's universal. Every woman says the same thing.
Okay.
Doesn't matter when Shabbos starts.
No.
Okay, but guess what? Your neshama yisera was not given to you to put you to sleep. So I do not believe that is what's causing that sudden fatigue, tiredness, or whatever. Now, as the Derech Hashem explains, in Hashemas Yisera, you do not feel it coming in, and you do not feel it leaving, but it's an extra dimension of your neshama that interacts with the upper worlds. And you know what the easiest way to understand this? What happens when you go to sleep?
The neshama leaves, right?
Now, what does that mean? Are you alive? Are you dead? What's doing?
Your body is alive.
Your body's alive.
Shaman's there.
Yeah,
I mean,
Shaman.
it's giving good mechashman for everything you did that day. So it's there.
Okay, so the Derech Hashem explains as follows. When you go to sleep, the only thing functioning when you're sleeping is dimyon, imagination. The rest of your mind is put to rest. Hashem wants to allow all the animals in the world, man as well, to have a time of rest so that you're refreshed, you're able to rest up and start the next day fresh. During this time of sleeping, what happens is the only part of your mind, the only part of you that's functioning is your dimyon, imagination. However, you're up in the neshama, and there are a number of parts up in the neshama. At that point, they're allowed to leave, and they're allowed to go up to Shemayim.
At what point is sleeping? Is it like if you take a
Not
nap?
REM. I don't think.
Is it like, is it if you fall asleep in the middle of a class, or is it like, full? Like,
That's a good question.
like,
Maybe
at what
is it
point
only
is
REM,
sleeping?
or I don't know. Maybe you're right.
I mean, I'm constantly woken up in the middle of the night, so I don't think my neshama has any time to leave.
It doesn't take long to travel.
Every time it leaves, it gets called backward.
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe only REM sleep. I don't know. But the point is, when you're asleep, let's assume you're sound asleep. Let's say rapid eye movement sleep, you're totally out. So at that point, the only part left functioning is dimyon, imagination. All the other parts of your mind, as well as your lower neshama, are at rest. Parts.
So that means that all dreams are coming from just Dimyon?
Well, they're all interpreted through dimyon, but the dimyon is the only part of you that's functioning when you're asleep. Now, what happens is many parts of your upper neshama, there are 5 parts of upper neshama, what they are and the different jobs they do, I don't know. You have to be a Kabbalist. But bottom line is, they're allowed to go up to Shemayim, and they're allowed to interact with the Pekidim, the Sarim, the Malachim, the spiritual entities that exist. Now, if you ever have a dream, the reason why Chazal take dreams very seriously is because when your upper neshama leaves, you're allowed to interact with different kochas. Now, sometimes Hashem is sending a malach to tell you a message. Sometimes it's a koach hatumah that's in the upper world that's going to tell you things that are totally false. But no matter what happens, you're going to experience it with your dimyon active, your imagination active. So when you have a dream at night, it could be completely dimyon, completely just imagination, events of the day that are just being twisted and kind of, regurgitated in convoluted form. Or it could be that at that point your upper neshama is experiencing something, a pakid or a malach is telling it something, and you're actually experiencing what would be considered close to nevuah. But because your dimyon is what's alive then, it's interpreted through your imagination. So there's no dream that doesn't include some falseness to it, because it's always interpreted through dimyon, through your imagination. So even if you have a dream on a regular basis, Chazal take dreams that you have regularly, repeatedly, very seriously. So if you have a dream that you have repeatedly, it might well be something that you're being told Meshamayim. Now you don't know, at this point you don't know if it was told to you by a malach and it's emes, or it's told to you by an upper force that's kol chatuma and it's false. But regardless of who said it to your upper neshama, you're now experiencing it with your dimyon active, with your imagination active, and so automatically you're like kind of viewing it with those crazy glasses. You're seeing things in a distorted manner, and even if the message is, Bob is going to make $1 million next week, you may see that as George, not Bob, and not $1 million, but $1, and he's going to lose money, because you're going to be, again, you're interpreting it through dimyon. So there's always some confusion. So most dreams that we have, the vast majority of dreams, now covered Freud, Yomod B'Makomo, let's not disparage Freud tonight, we can disparage him any other time, but the vast majority of dreams that you have are utter, complete nonsense, of no relevance, of no consequence, of no meaning. With all psychoanalysts, all psychoanalysts, with their respect remaining where it should be. But the vast majority of dreams that you have has no meaning whatsoever. However, again, there are some dreams that have great validity. Again, if you have a certain dream that's very vivid and very real, and you have it repeatedly, so the Gemara has certain things that you see that have certain meaning, and if you have a dream, it's a good idea to go to a chacham and have him pater it, have him explain it, because the dreams go after interpretation. Why? I don't know, that's way above my pay scale. But the bottom line is that what's happening is a part of your neshama go into the upper world, see things, and can experience things, and you're going to see it in a distorted manner. Okay, now,
Why does that have to happen now?
why does it? Because the part of you that's functioning when you're up in the neshama leaves is a dimyon. So your dimyon is awake, imagination is awake, all the other senses, all other parts of your lower neshama are asleep. So you're going to interpret it through dimyon, imagination. Imagination is a flexible reality. Imagination is not tied to reality. Imagination is the world of make-believe, of Pinocchio and fairy tales. And
I always knew I never had imagination.
I'm sorry?
I have no dreams. I said, I always knew I had no
Yeah, it's
imagination.
like
I have
pass
no
out and wake up
dreams.
with 2 hours.
Okay, if you don't remember your dreams, there are reasons why. Assuming you have REM, which if you're a functional human being, you have REM sleep, you have dreams. Now, whether you remember them or not is another issue. There are people who are more in tune to their dreams, and people who dream less, dream more. But REM dreams are associated with deep sleep. Now, again, many people don't remember their dreams at all. Some people do. I think it really depends on the speed that you awaken from REM with. In other words, meaning if you come from REM, from deep rapid eye movement sleep, and you're awoken suddenly, you're more likely to remember your dream because it happened shortly thereafter. But if you slowly, you go through the cycles of deep sleep, and then you start rising up, but it takes a while. So let's see, we're at 2 a.m., you had a rapid eye movement, sleep, but then you slowly start to come up and you wake up at 2:30, you may not remember that dream. It was long ago, and it's whatever the case. The point being that the dreams have sometimes have relevance, sometimes don't. Now, why were we given this upper neshama? This upper neshama is really what was given to guide us and was given to interact in the upper worlds. And it's something that we're totally not attuned to, not aware of, but it greatly influences us. And it's sort of like somebody over your shoulder who's like constantly saying, come on, let's go, learn, daven, do what's right, be a mensch, do innards. When we talk about your guilty conscience, when we talk about your that's a big part. Your neshama, the upper neshama, was given to direct you, to guide you, to bring you along the path. And this is why it's so difficult being a human being. In other words, we forget who we are. We forget that I am the one inside. We forget I have a nefesh bahami. We forget I have an upper neshama. We're not attuned to it. We're not aware of it. And so we find ourselves in other states of confusion. So I have a simple Musar exercise that I think is so powerful. If on a regular basis you ask yourself this question, who am I? And all you do is you say, I'm the one inside. Good, I'm the guy inside. But more than that, I know exactly what I'm supposed to do in every situation. I know what's right, I know what's wrong, because I have an upper neshama that's perfectly programmed and perfectly, it knows exactly what to do. And all I have to do is listen to it and ignore what I want to do. Every time my Rebbe Shmuz used to say, any moral dilemma you could always solve. Do I do this? Do I do that? Should I say this? Should I say that? Should I say this? Shouldn't I say that? So again, anytime you can ask an eitzah, you shol eitzah, good. Let's say you can't. How do you know what the right thing to do is?
Ask yourself.
What do you mean?
The first answer that comes up, that's your
Oh.
instinct. I don't know. I remember when you learned it at one point.
Right. So really what you're doing is like this. You're saying, what is the right thing to do? Well, I want, no. I don't care what you want. I don't care what your agenda is, and I don't care what the consequences are. What is the right thing to do? And if you say to yourself, what is the right thing to do? And you train yourself not to be, you see, I know what the right thing is, but if I do that, then I'm going to lose money. I'm not going to have this opportunity. I'm going to, whatever. What's the right thing to do? Forget my agenda, forget my interests, forget the consequences. What is the right thing to do? If you phrase it that way and you listen, you'll instantly know the answer, because I've been programmed. I've been up in a Shaman that's programmed with everything holy, everything right. It's hooked into the upper worlds. It changes the upper worlds. It lights up the upper worlds. And it's directly influencing. It's a part of me. It's right there. As long as I'm conscious and alert, it's right there. And all I have to do is ask myself, what's the right thing to do? And instantly, I know it. No?
I wish.
Okay, the reason why you don't know is because there's another voice that says, but. If I do this, then, if you ignore the other voice and just ask yourself,
To
no?
me, there's certain times, not often, but certain times when both alternatives are equally valid. I mean, then I go to a Rav.
No, yeah. Let's assume you can't go to Rav. But listen to the way I'm phrasing it. I'm not asking you what's valid, what's the right thing to do. What's the right thing to do? What's the right thing to do? The right thing to do is, but you'll know. What's the right thing to do? Again, you have to just teach yourself to ignore the static and to ignore what you were, but just train yourself to just, what's the right thing to do? All right, no? Try it.
She's not buying it.
Try it as an exercise. Try it. The next time you have a moral dilemma, again, if you get asked, you always have to ask, because it's a lot better to have someone outside you, because it's not always easy to train yourself to listen. But let's say you can't.
You can rationalize anything to yourself.
See, but that you can rationalize anything to yourself. You can tell a
Well,
rational.
What's the right thing to do? This is the right thing to do. Because in your perception of it, that's the right thing to do. That
Right.
doesn't mean it is the right thing
You
to do.
can rationalize to yourself, but you know what the right thing is. In other words, if I ask myself, what's the right thing? So I can rationalize it, but I know deep down what's right. And all you have to do is ask yourself, what's the right thing to do? And if you ask yourself, what's the right thing to do? And you train yourself not what I want, not what I'm interested in, not what do I want to rationalize to be okay, even though it's not okay, but what's the right thing? Boom, you'll know the answer. Try it. Try it as an exercise.
Sometimes, because my job is helping other people. If you're helping another person, that complicates it.
What's the right thing for you to do?
Here,
For them to, I don't know, that's another issue, but what's the right thing for you to
me
do?
to do.
Right. For them to do, you got to be a posting, you got to be a Goodall, Torah, I don't know. But you have an neshama, you have an upper neshama that guides you. All right, so let's recap real quick. Who am I? I'm me. When I die, who is it who stands in front of the Beis Din Shemala? Me. Not my arms, not my head, not my chest, not my... I with all my thoughts, I with all my thinking. Now, the reason why it's a little bit complicated who I am is because right now I'm in this body. This body also has a Nefesh Bahami. And that Nefesh Bahami is very, very influential and pulls me. And for that reason, I'm a little bit like Brittany and Abby, where if Brittany drinks, Abby's going to get drunk. And the minute the Nefesh Bahami starts acting up, suddenly I get drunk with whatever it drank. So if it drank anger or jealousy or laziness or whatever, suddenly the bloodstream is flooded with that stuff. And all of a sudden I am greatly influenced by it and I start feeling those things. But once that passes, once it leaves the bloodstream, I come back to being sober, suddenly I see things clearly again. In addition to which I have an upper neshama, and that upper neshama is pure and untouched by anything that the body does. It interacts with the upper worlds. It knows exactly what to do. It guides me. It helps me. The only thing is that if I mess up in a big way, then it lights up kochas atum in the upper world, and that influences me badly. But hopefully I don't do that, and everything is good. All right?
Why are you not letting us use the word neshama when we say who I am?
Because neshama is a very confusing word. People think of it as like their alter ego, they split some distant cousin, some like the thing over here. Like I'm here, and this is like some my neshama, like some splintered down version. No, it's pshitas abeg. When I die, I take the coat off and I
It's
stay
much
the
closer than the neshama.
Right, neshama is like neshama. My neshama is gonna burn. I was a high school rebbe. I used to tell the guys, why don't you sin? Because my neshama is going to burn. I would say, it's good. Let your neshama burn. You party, take care. You let your neshama burn. Why should you work so hard? Your neshama can have a good time in the world to come. The answer is you are the neshama. Because the word neshama is a broad term that refers to a number of elements of you. You, your conscious you, the upper neshama, etc. But the bottom line is it's I who think, I who feel, I who remember. That's the one who's going to leave. I wear this baggage. I temporarily have this physical experience. Oh, I got to take questions from people who are on the Zoom. Okay, if anyone has questions, please type them in. If you have questions, you can type them in. You can ask, okay, does the upper neshama have free will? Okay, that's an excellent question. Does the upper neshama have free will? So the upper neshama has free will, much like a malach has free will, meaning a malach sees things with absolute clarity of vision. So it has free will, but it would never disobey Hashem's wishes, because it knows that anything that Hashem commands is for its good, anything Hashem warned against is for its bad. So the upper neshama has bechira, but again, it sees the consequences. It sees without drunkenness, without confusion. It sees exactly what it should do, and therefore it only wants to do what's good, right, and proper. Now the problem is that when I do things wrong, let's say I eat a tray sandwich, not only am I metamtem my guf, but the upper neshama now has to get involved with kochas atuma, and it becomes darkened, and it brings down bad influences back down to me. When I do what's right, it lights up upper worlds, and it becomes more enlightened, and therefore it enlightens me. So there's a sort of back and forth between the upper worlds and the lower worlds, between the neshama, upper neshama and lower neshama, where things get a little complicated. But again, it is pure until I taint it. It remains, and even then it remains pure, but it's affected by kol chatuma. All right, so far so bad, right?
Question.
Yes.
At what point do I become I? At birth? At conception? Like, at what point?
So your intelligence begins to form as you become maturing. So at 2 years of age, you have to think through the brain. But depending on what your brain functions, how your brain functions, it'll determine how you're going to perceive things, how you're going to understand things. A 2-year-old brain is a very underdeveloped and very immature brain. So you think through it. You perceive the world through that brain. It's like you're wearing glasses that are very, very foggy. As you get older, your brain matures, and therefore your ability to relate to things, to understand things, to see things change. Your glasses become better, your vision becomes sharper. You're able to perceive things as you 10, 12, 14, 18, 20. At a certain point, you reach maturity where you're able to, your mind that you think through, it gives you a much clearer vision of things, a much clearer understanding. So did I confuse that totally?
A little bit.
Again, you're the one inside. But all right, here, let's do it this way.
You're saying that my brain is me, but...
No, here, watch this. Let's say I have a great Talmid Chacham, and he has a traumatic brain injury, loses all his memory. Okay, and 10 years later he dies. He comes to Shemayim. How much Torah does he have?
Whatever he learned from the beginning.
Everything he did.
But he forgot all of it. He had a traumatic brain disorder, damage, and
But it made his neshama.
so I think through the brain. What that means is I have to think through this clunky, heavy thing called the brain, but it's I who thinks through the brain. And when I leave this body, every single event of my life comes flashing back to me because I know it, I remember it, I lived it, I experienced it. As long as I'm inside this body, I'm blocked and I can only access certain things because I have to think through the brain. But the brain is clunky and slow and sluggish. If it gets things, it gets confused, it gets drunk. But I have to think through the brain.
Would he even have the Torah that he could have learned those 10 years?
No.
That he won't have?
No. won't be held against him, but he won't have it.
But it doesn't answer my question though. Because then at what point do I become I? At birth or before I'm born?
Leagues and leagues, ages and ages, eons before you were born.
So it's before I'm born.
Way before you were born. Way before you were born.
All the neshamas were created at the same time?
Yep. Way
When? Har Sinai?
before Har Sinai. All the neshamas were created and they're put into and they're put into the world at different kufas, different times. They're put into the world depending on who, when, what, and why. But you were under the Kisei HaKavod, you, and then Hashem. And by the way, you're shown what your life is going to be. You're shown the events of your life. You're shown what, who you're going to marry, basically your kids, what things are going to transpire. And remember, as we discussed, Nimnu, everyone says, yes, that's exactly right for me. I want that. That's perfect for me. But then you're put into the body. Now, this entering the body experience is very darkening and very like being put to sleep and put into this huge this heavy coat, and you have to now think through the sluggish brain, and more than that, you wake up as an infant that has no brain, no IQ of a 2-day-old. So you're like it's so thick and so corporeal, and it's very in reality it's not pleasant at all. The neshama does not enjoy its stay in this world at all. But as long as you're in this brain, you have to see through the brain, you have to think through the brain. It's like wearing glasses. You see, in other words, meaning I perceive the world through these eyes. That's so too I think through the brain, but it's I who think through the brain. Yeah.
One question. The 9 months that a fetus is in the womb, they're being taught Torah, right?
Right.
And then they come out and a malach pinches them and they forget it. What's the point of the pinch then if they're coming into a body and the body is so bogged down anyway? That
Right.
they're gonna be
So once heard Rav Goodall, that I'll explain. You ever see 2 kids play the violin? One kid's talented. He picks it up and it's music, it's beautiful. The other kid's not yet screeching. You learned the entire Torah already. It's familiar. You're like a talented kid playing the instrument. You're not. It's not new turf. It's not new territory. It's something you've learned before. Even though you don't remember it, but it's you're natural at it. So that's
Well, why do we have to forget it? That was my question.
Oh, why do you have to forget it? Because otherwise there's no bechira. If you knew.
So why do it to begin
But
with?
we're coming
Do it to
into-
begin with, so you're when you learn it, it's natural to you. It's something
That
you've
takes
learned
away
already.
bechira.
What makes it easier, but you're still a bechira. Haraya, plenty of people mess up, and you also have the option not to learn it. But when you get involved in learning, it's more natural to you, more instinctive. You've learned it already. You're almost programmed already for it. You've done it.
Everyone is taught it, regardless if they're Jewish or not.
Oh, I don't know if that's true. No,
No, I'm
a guy
asking, I don't
and a Jew have different neshamas. No, I don't.
So it's
That's
only taught to Jews, even those that don't even know they're Jewish, they still learn it.
correct.
So as long as their mother is Jewish, they
Yep.
learn Torah
Mhm.
at one point.
And what about a ger?
So Ger comes under Avram Avinu's tree, and he's given a neshama of a Jew. It's a dramatic transformation. A Ger is allowed to marry. In theory, he has no relations anymore. Anyone he's a newborn infant. It's like a newborn entity. He's given a new neshama, and he begins afresh from that point on. Someone has a question. Someone goes off the derech. Is nefesh bahami become stronger, and the man inside weaker? Yes. In other words, what happens is either your nefesh bahami becomes stronger or it becomes weaker, depending on use or disuse. So, if you use your nefesh bahami to serve Hashem, your neshama becomes stronger. The nefesh bahami becomes weaker. If you allow the nefesh bahami to take control, it becomes stronger, more prominent. It becomes far more dominant over you, and you become much more behemei and much less holy. Yeah, sorry.
There was a story recently about a yeshiva bacher who, when he went to get married, he found out that he was really not Jewish.
Mm.
And you heard the
No,
story.
you mean
He found out that his mother had
Oh, right,
converted,
right.
but not really properly. And somebody was saying that the reason he was able to learn with such geschmack was because he didn't have a
Is
yetzer.
that could be? You never know. What if someone has serious insomnia? Does it affect the time the neshama has in the upper world? That's a good question. I'll tell you one thing. If someone has serious insomnia, it affects the impact the neshama has in this world. That I can tell you. Because if you have serious insomnia, you can't function as a human being in this world, and you have to figure out how to deal with it. You have to find the solution. If it's sleep apnea, you have to deal with it. If it's insomnia, you have to do your best to deal with it. All right, we went over time a little bit. So, ladies, I thank you very much for attending and listening. If you've not had a chance yet to get the 10 really dumb mistakes that very smart couples make, it's becoming a bestseller, folks. It really is. Yeah, Baruch Hashem, it's selling much more than novels. That's what they're telling me. It's like in any case, it's available in the Storm Store. It's available on Amazon, and it's available on Shmuz.com. If you go to Shmuz.com, not only do you get the hardcover with free shipping, you also get the audiobook, the ebook, as well as Marriage Transformation Bootcamp as a free bonus. THESHMUZ.com. Thank you. Have a good Shabbos. See you next week.
She getting better.
Is it off?
Goodall.
Hold on for 1 second.